how did my mother-in-law's favorite threat become her worst nightmare? My mother-in-law, Donna, moved in with us after she sold her house, claiming she needed time to find a new place, but immediately started using the same threat every time she didn't get her way. "If you don't like how I do things, I'll just leave," she'd say, knowing we'd panic because she watched our kids while we worked. She figured out this weapon on day 3 when I asked her not to rearrange my kitchen, and she grabbed her suitcase saying, "I guess I'm not welcome here." My husband Carl begged her to stay, and she smirked, knowing she'd found her power move. From then on, everything became a hostage situation. When I asked her not to give the kids candy before dinner, she'd say, "Maybe I should just go stay with your brother." When Carl mentioned she'd used all the hot water, she'd start packing dramatically. I know when I'm not wanted. We'd always cave because we needed her help with childcare, and she knew it. She started getting bolder with her demands. She wanted the master bedroom because her back hurt. "Give me the room or I'm leaving tomorrow." We moved into the small guest room. She wanted to control the grocery shopping because she didn't like my cooking. "Let me handle the food or I'll find somewhere else to live." I watched her buy nothing but processed meals while my kids ate garbage. She'd invite her friends over without asking, and when we said we needed quiet for work, she'd call her sister loudly saying, "I'm looking for a place to stay, they don't want me here." The sister would call Carl and guilt him about his poor mother being homeless. She redecorated our entire living room with her tacky furniture, putting our stuff in storage. When I protested, she was already on the phone with moving companies. "Yes, I need to ship my things to Florida. I'm not welcome here anymore." Carl would panic and tell me to just let her have her way. 2 years this went on. 2 years of being held hostage in our own home by someone who contributed nothing but demanded everything. She didn't pay rent, didn't buy groceries, didn't even clean up after herself. But somehow we were supposed to be grateful she graced us with her presence. She'd tell everyone we begged her to stay, and she was doing us this huge favor. The breaking point came when she decided my daughter Megan couldn't go to her friend's birthday party because she didn't approve of the family. They were wonderful people, but Donna thought they were beneath us. Megan was crying, and I said she was going to the party. Donna stood up and announced, "That's it, I'm done being disrespected. I'm leaving first thing tomorrow morning." She expected me to panic and apologize like always. Instead, I said, "Okay, I'll help you pack." Her face went white. "What?" she said. "You're leaving tomorrow morning, right? Let's get you packed." I went to her room and started putting her clothes in suitcases. Carl came home to find me loading boxes, and Donna following me around saying she didn't mean right away. "No, you said first thing tomorrow. We should respect your decision." I called her sister Beth. "Donna's moving in with you tomorrow. She says we don't respect her, so she's leaving." Beth was confused. "She can't stay here, I don't have room." I put it on speaker so Donna could hear. "Well, she's leaving our house tomorrow morning, so someone needs to take her." Donna tried to backtrack. "I just meant I needed space." But I kept packing. I called Carl's brother. "Donna's moving out tomorrow, can she stay with you?" He laughed. "Absolutely not. She lived with us for 6 months and nearly destroyed our marriage." Donna was getting desperate. "I'll stay a little longer until I find something." I pulled out my laptop. "Here's a lovely extended stay hotel nearby. I'll book you a week." She watched me enter my credit card information and actually complete the booking. "Check-in is at noon tomorrow." I kept packing methodically. Her friends started texting her because Beth had called them trying to find Donna a place to stay. Turns out Donna had lived with 3 different friends over the past 5 years and burned every bridge with the same threatening behavior. Her friend Rose texted, "Do not bring her here." She threatened to leave my house every day for 8 months until I finally threw her out. Another friend, Joan, wrote, "She did the same thing to me. Let her leave. It's the only way." Donna sat on the bed watching her entire manipulation network crumble. She couldn't use her threat anymore because I'd called her bluff. That night, she tried everything. She cried about being an old woman with nowhere to go. She promised to be better. She accused me of elder abuse. She called Carl weak for not standing up to me. Nothing worked. I just kept packing. The next morning, I loaded her car while neighbors watched. As Donna's car pulled out of the driveway, my phone buzzed with a call from the police. They were coming to the house to take a report about elder abuse that Donna had already filed against me before she left, complete with fabricated medical documentation, and the police had already called about before she even left the house. Requested Reds is on Spotify now. Check out link in the description or comments. I stood in my kitchen trying to process that. While Donna was dramatically packing last night, she'd been secretly filing false reports against me, and the officer on the phone sounded professional but serious when she said they needed to investigate these claims immediately. I gave her our address and she said someone would arrive within the hour, and I texted Carl that he needed to come home right now because his mother had filed elder abuse charges against me. He called back within 30 seconds asking what I was talking about, and I explained that Donna had apparently planned this revenge before she drove away, complete with fake medical papers claiming I'd hurt her. Carl said he was leaving work immediately and would be there in 20 minutes, and I spent those 20 minutes gathering every piece of evidence I could find that showed the truth about Donna's time in our house. I pulled up the hotel booking confirmation on my laptop, found the texts from Rose and her other friends warning about her manipulation, took photos of the empty master bedroom that she'd demanded from us, and made a list of every time she'd threatened to leave over the past 2 years. Officer Medina arrived exactly when she said she would, a woman in her 40s with kind eyes but a notebook ready to document everything, and I invited her inside immediately because I had nothing to hide. She asked if I was comfortable talking, and I said yes, explaining that my mother-in-law had just moved out this morning after living with us for 2 years. And she was apparently retaliating because I'd finally called her bluff when she threatened to leave. I showed Officer Medina the hotel confirmation with today's date and checkout time at noon, and she wrote that down carefully before asking about the medical documentation Donna had submitted. I had no idea what medical documents Donna could have fabricated since she was perfectly healthy, and had never needed my help with medications or physical care. But Officer Medina explained that the complaint claimed I'd been withholding Donna's heart medication and forcing her to do heavy cleaning that aggravated her back condition. I actually laughed because Donna hadn't cleaned a single thing in 2 years, and I'd never even seen her take heart medication. And Officer Medina's expression shifted slightly, like she was starting to see the real picture here. Carl arrived while we were talking, and I could see the panic on his face when he saw the police car in our driveway. But Officer Medina was calm and professional as she explained she needed to ask us both some questions separately. She interviewed Carl in the kitchen while I waited in the living room, and I could hear his voice getting louder as he explained his mother's pattern of threats and manipulation. When Officer Medina came back to talk to me, she asked very specific questions about whether I'd ever prevented Donna from leaving the house or taking her medications. And I answered honestly that Donna came and went as she pleased, and I'd actually begged her to stay multiple times when she threatened to leave. I showed her the text between me and Beth where I'd tried to find Donna somewhere to go, and the messages from Carl's brother saying he absolutely wouldn't take her in after she'd nearly destroyed his marriage. Officer Medina asked to see where Donna had been sleeping, and I took her to the master bedroom, explaining that Donna had demanded this room, and we'd moved into the small guest room to accommodate her. She looked at the empty room with Donna's furniture gone, and our stuff still in boxes in the hallway, and she made notes about how this didn't match a situation where someone was abused or controlled. Carl finished his interview and came to find me, and I could see he was shaking with anger that his mother would actually try to get me arrested. Officer Medina said she'd seen enough to know this didn't look like an elder abuse situation, but Adult Protective Services would still need to investigate since a formal complaint had been filed. She gave me a card with a case number and said someone from APS would contact me within a few days, and she also noted that filing a false police report was itself a crime if that's what this turned out to be. After she left, Carl and I just sat on the couch in silence for a while, both of us trying to process that his mother had actually done this. Carl kept saying he couldn't believe she'd go this far, but I reminded him that she'd shown us exactly who she was for 2 years, and we just hadn't wanted to see it. That night I couldn't sleep because I kept thinking about what other lies Donna might have included in her complaint, and I decided I needed to talk to a lawyer before APS showed up. My friend had used a family lawyer named Eric for her divorce and said he was excellent, so I called his office first thing the next morning and explained the situation. The receptionist said Eric had an opening that afternoon if I could come in, and I took it immediately because I needed to understand what I was facing legally. Carl took off work to come with me, and we sat in Eric's office while I laid out everything that had happened over the past 2 years. Eric listened carefully and took notes, asking specific questions about the timeline and whether we had any documentation of Donna's threats and behavior. I showed him everything I'd gathered, including the texts, the hotel booking, and the statements from Donna's friends about her manipulation patterns. Eric reviewed the police report that Officer Medina had filed, and his eyebrows went up when he read about the fabricated medical documents Donna had submitted. He explained that creating false medical records was actually a serious crime, and the fact that Donna had filed the complaint before she even left our house proved this was retaliation, rather than genuine concern for her safety. I felt some relief hearing that, but Eric warned me that APS investigations could be invasive and stressful, even when the claims were false, and I should prepare for them to interview neighbors and possibly even talk to my kids. He asked if I'd considered getting a restraining order, and I admitted I hadn't thought that far ahead. But Eric said given Donna's pattern of harassment and now false accusations, it might be necessary to protect our family. The idea of legally banning Carl's mother from our home felt extreme and terrifying, but Eric walked us through what that would involve and why it might be the right choice. Carl surprised me by agreeing immediately, saying his mother had crossed a line he never thought she'd cross, and he didn't trust what she might do next. We left Eric's office with a plan to file for the restraining order as soon as the APS investigation closed, and I felt like we were finally taking control instead of just reacting to Donna's manipulation. The next week, Carl and I toured 3 different daycare centers before we found Little Sprouts Learning Center on the east side of town. The director showed us around, and I watched how the teachers interacted with the kids, looking for any sign of the manipulation tactics Donna had used. Instead, I saw trained professionals who redirected behavior calmly and explained things to the children at their level without threats or guilt trips. Megan and Mackenzie came with us for the trial day, and within an hour, Megan was playing blocks with 2 other girls her age, while Mackenzie painted at an easel without anyone hovering over her criticizing her technique. The first week cost $800, which was way more than we'd budgeted for, but watching my kids actually excited to go somewhere in the morning made every dollar worth it. They came home talking about their teachers and the activities instead of reporting what Grandma said they did wrong or what rules Grandma made up that day. 2 days after the kids started daycare, I opened my work email and found a message from an address I didn't recognize with the subject line, "What you've done to this family." I almost deleted it as spam, but something made me open it, and there was a 3-page rant from Donna about how I poisoned Carl against her and destroyed their relationship. She wrote that I was jealous of her bond with her son and couldn't stand that he loved his mother more than me. She said I manipulated him into throwing her out, and now she was alone with nowhere to go because of my cruelty. The email went on and on about how she sacrificed everything to help us with childcare, and this was how we repaid her kindness. I forwarded it to Eric immediately without even finishing reading it because my hands were shaking too much. He called me within 20 minutes and told me this was perfect evidence of ongoing harassment that would strengthen our restraining order case. He said to save any future emails but not respond to them because engagement was what she wanted, and silence would drive her crazy. Beth called me that afternoon and said she'd been thinking about the restraining order hearing and wanted to help. She asked if I needed anyone to testify about Donna's history, and I told her that would be incredible if she was willing. She said she'd write up a statement about the 8 months Donna lived with her family, and the same exact manipulation patterns she used. 2 hours later, my email dinged with a 10-page document from Beth detailing how Donna moved in, claiming she just needed a few weeks after a breakup, but immediately started using threats to control their household. Beth wrote about how Donna took over their guest room and refused to look for her own place, then started demanding they rearrange their schedules around her needs. She described the same "I'll just leave" threat every time Beth tried to set any boundary, and how her husband nearly divorced her because the stress of managing Donna was destroying their marriage. Reading Beth's statement made me cry because it was like reading my own experience written by someone else. The same threats, the same manipulation tactics, the same guilt trips about being unwanted and unloved. Beth wrote that she finally threw Donna out after Donna called the police claiming Beth was stealing from her, which turned out to be completely false but caused Beth months of stress dealing with the investigation. Jeremy also agreed to testify and sent his own statement about the 6 months Donna lived with him and his wife, describing how she nearly destroyed their marriage with constant manipulation and boundary violations. The week before the hearing, Donna's friends started calling Carl's phone trying to guilt him into dropping the restraining order. His phone rang at dinner, and it was someone named Grace who said she'd known Donna for 30 years and couldn't believe Carl would do this to his own mother. Carl put the phone on speaker so I could hear and calmly explained that his mother filed false abuse charges and harassed us repeatedly after we helped her move out. Grace tried to argue that Donna was just hurt and scared, but Carl told her the facts of what happened and said he needed to protect his family. She hung up angry, but Carl handled it without caving to the pressure. Another friend called the next day with the same guilt trip, and Carl gave the same calm explanation of the timeline and evidence. I watched him stand firm against people who'd known him since childhood, and felt proud of how much he'd grown in just these few weeks. That night after the kids went to bed, Carl told me he'd been seeing a therapist for the past 2 weeks. He said he found someone who specialized in family dynamics and manipulation, and had been working through his childhood conditioning. His therapist helped him understand that his mother trained him from a young age to always prioritize her feelings over his own needs, and that protecting our children from her manipulation was actually the most loving thing he could do. Carl said he'd spent his whole life being terrified of his mother's disapproval, and it was like breaking an addiction to finally choose his own family first. He cried while he told me this, and I held him while he processed decades of guilt and obligation that his mother had weaponized against him. Eric called 3 days before the hearing to tell us Donna had filed a counterclaim. She was demanding we pay her $60,000 for the 2 years of childcare she provided, claiming we owed her $30 per hour for watching the kids. Eric actually laughed when he read it to me because Donna was essentially admitting she was compensated with free housing, utilities, food, and living expenses for 2 years. He said this completely undermined her abuse claims, because she was acknowledging she received substantial value for her childcare instead of being exploited. The counterclaim would actually help our case because it showed Donna's real motivation was financial and retaliatory rather than genuine concern about abuse. The morning of the hearing, I put on the navy dress I'd bought for job interviews, and Carl wore his good suit. We met Eric outside the courthouse at 8:30, and he reviewed the evidence one more time. He had 3 binders organized with tabs for the hotel booking, the text messages from Donna's friends, Beth and Jeremy's statements, the APS investigation results, and Donna's harassing emails. We walked into the courtroom, and Donna was already sitting at the other table with a lawyer who looked about 25 years old. She was wearing a black dress and had her hair done like she was going to a funeral, playing up the grieving mother angle. Her lawyer kept glancing at our evidence binders, and I could see him getting nervous as Eric laid out document after document. The judge came in and we all stood. Then she told us to sit and explain why we were seeking the restraining order. Eric presented our case methodically, starting with the 2-year timeline of Donna living with us and using threats to manipulate our household. He showed the judge examples of Donna's escalating demands and how she weaponized the threat of leaving to control everything from our bedroom to our food to our children's activities. The judge listened carefully and took notes while Eric walked through the evidence. Then Eric presented the evidence of Donna pre-filing the abuse complaint before she even left our house, which proved it was retaliation rather than genuine concern. Donna's lawyer tried to object, but the judge told him she wanted to hear the full presentation before arguments. Eric showed the texts from Donna's friends warning us about her manipulation patterns and confirming she'd used the same tactics in their homes. He presented the APS investigation results showing no evidence of abuse or neglect. Then he presented Donna's harassing emails and her counterclaim demanding payment for childcare as evidence of ongoing harassment and financial motivation. Beth took the stand and the judge swore her in. She testified about the 8 months Donna lived with her family and the identical manipulation patterns. Beth described how Donna used the threat of leaving every single day to control their household decisions, and how she refused to look for her own place despite claiming she was desperate to leave. The judge asked Beth pointed questions about whether Donna had a history of making false claims when she didn't get her way. Beth explained that Donna filed a false police report claiming Beth was stealing from her when Beth finally set boundaries and forced her to move out. The judge wrote this down and asked if the police investigated those claims. Beth said yes, and the investigation found no evidence of theft, but it cost her thousands in legal fees and months of stress. The judge asked if Donna ever apologized for the false accusations, and Beth said no. Donna just moved on to the next family member who would take her in. Jeremy testified next about the 6 months Donna lived with him and his wife. He described how his mother used threats to control every aspect of their household, from what they ate to when they could have friends over to how they spent their money. Jeremy's voice cracked when he talked about how his wife almost left him because the stress of managing his mother's manipulation was destroying their marriage. He said his mother would threaten to leave if they didn't do exactly what she wanted, but then refused to actually look for her own place. The judge asked if his mother ever contributed financially during those 6 months, and Jeremy said no. She claimed she couldn't afford rent, but somehow had money for shopping and her hair appointments. His wife had submitted a written statement that Eric handed to the judge describing the psychological toll of living under constant threat of abandonment. The judge read it carefully, and I could see her expression shift from neutral to concerned as she absorbed the pattern across multiple family members. When it was my turn to testify, I walked to the stand and the judge swore me in. My hands were shaking, but I kept my voice steady as I explained the 2 years of escalating demands and threats. I focused on specific examples like how Donna demanded our master bedroom, and we moved into the guest room to avoid her leaving. I described how she controlled our grocery shopping and fed our kids processed food while claiming my cooking wasn't good enough. I explained how she redecorated our entire living room with her furniture and put our belongings in storage, threatening to leave if we protested. The judge asked me directly if I ever prevented Donna from leaving, and I answered honestly that I begged her to stay multiple times because we were terrified of losing our childcare and having her turn the family against us. I told the judge about the breaking point with Megan's birthday party and how I finally called Donna's bluff by helping her pack. The judge asked what happened next, and I described finding out about the pre-filed abuse complaint and the fabricated medical documentation. She asked if I had any idea why Donna would file false charges, and I said because I stopped letting her manipulate us, and she wanted revenge. Eric stood and addressed the judge, pointing to the timeline in his documents showing Donna filed her complaint 2 days before she left our house. The judge's expression shifted as she examined the dates, then looked at Donna's lawyer with raised eyebrows. Donna's lawyer tried to argue that his client was planning ahead because she feared retaliation, but Eric interrupted with the hotel booking confirmation showing I paid for Donna's room myself. The judge asked Donna's lawyer directly how filing false abuse charges before leaving showed genuine fear rather than planned revenge, and he stumbled through an answer about protective measures that made no sense. The courtroom was silent as the judge made notes, and I could see Donna shifting in her seat, realizing her timeline didn't support her story at all. The judge called Donna to the stand and she walked up slowly, dabbing at her eyes with a tissue. She started crying immediately about being thrown out with nowhere to go, describing how cruel I was and how she had no family support. The judge let her talk for a few minutes, then asked her specific questions about the abuse allegations in her medical documents. Donna said I withheld her heart medication for 3 days, but the judge asked which medication and Donna couldn't name it. The judge asked about the excessive physical labor claim, and Donna said I made her clean the entire house daily. But then the judge asked why the police report from the home visit described the house as messy if she was forced to clean it constantly. Donna's face went red and she changed her story, saying she meant I made her cook elaborate meals, but the judge pointed out that her original complaint said I wouldn't let her in the kitchen. Each answer contradicted something else she'd claimed, and I watched her lawyer put his head in his hands as his client destroyed her own credibility. The judge asked about the fabricated medical documents showing injuries from physical abuse, and Donna insisted they were real. But when the judge asked which doctor examined her, Donna said she couldn't remember the name or location of the office. The judge held up the medical documents and asked Donna directly who helped her create them, because they were clearly fake. Donna's mouth opened and closed, but no sound came out, and the judge waited patiently for an answer that never came. The silence stretched for almost a minute before Donna finally said she didn't understand the question, which made the judge's expression harden. The judge explained slowly that filing false medical reports is a crime, and she was considering referring this case to the prosecutor's office for criminal charges. Donna started crying harder and said she just wanted her family back, completely abandoning her abuse story, and her lawyer requested a brief recess that the judge denied. The judge said Donna had wasted enough of the court's time with lies and manipulation, and she wanted to finish this hearing today. 3 hours after we started, the judge announced her decision. She granted our restraining order for 1 year, stating clearly that Donna had shown a pattern of manipulation and revenge across multiple family members. The judge said Donna's pre-filed complaint proved she planned retaliation before leaving. Her contradictory testimony showed she was lying about abuse, and the fabricated medical documents demonstrated she was willing to commit crimes to punish us for setting boundaries. The order required Donna to stay at least 500 feet from our home and have no contact with us except through lawyers. Carl grabbed my hand so tight it hurt, and I could feel him shaking next to me as the judge read the terms. Donna jumped up from her seat and started screaming that we'd regret this, and she'd make sure everyone knew what terrible people we were. Her lawyer tried to pull her back down, but she kept yelling about how ungrateful Carl was and how I'd poisoned him against her. The judge banged her gavel 3 times and threatened Donna with contempt of court, warning that any violation of the restraining order would result in immediate arrest. The bailiff moved closer to Donna and she finally sat down, but I could see her glaring at us with pure hate. The judge added that given Donna's outburst, she was also ordering a mental health evaluation before any future contact with the grandchildren could be considered, which made Donna start crying again, but quietly this time. We walked out of the courthouse into bright sunlight and Carl completely broke down on the steps. He sat down hard and put his face in his hands, sobbing so hard his whole body shook. I sat next to him and put my arm around his shoulders while he cried, not caring that people were walking past and staring. He kept saying he was scared the judge wouldn't believe us and we'd be stuck dealing with his mother forever, but now we had legal protection and proof we weren't crazy. I told him we'd won because we had truth on our side, and he nodded but couldn't stop crying. Beth came over and hugged both of us, telling Carl he did the right thing protecting his family, and Jeremy stood nearby looking relieved but sad. We sat there for 20 minutes while Carl processed everything, and I realized this was the first time in 2 years he'd felt safe enough to actually feel his emotions, instead of managing his mother's threats. That night, we tackled the master bedroom, moving our furniture back from storage piece by piece. Carl carried the dresser while I directed where it should go, and we both felt lighter with each item we returned to its proper place. Donna's tacky decorations went into boxes for donation, her frilly curtains came down, and our simple blinds went back up, and we stripped her floral bedding and put on our own sheets. The room smelled like her perfume, so I opened all the windows and lit candles, trying to erase 2 years of feeling like guests in our own bedroom. We found things she'd hidden in drawers, personal items she'd stashed in our closet, and Carl threw them all in a garbage bag without looking through them. By midnight, the room was ours again, and we climbed into our own bed in our own room for the first time since Donna moved in. Carl fell asleep within minutes, his breathing deep and steady in a way I hadn't heard in months, and I lay there feeling the weight of constant stress finally lifting from my chest. A week later, my phone rang while I was at work, and it was Mackenzie's school saying Donna had shown up trying to pick her up. My heart stopped, and I told them to keep Mackenzie inside and call the police immediately. Then I called Carl and Eric while running to my car. The school principal stayed on the phone with me while I drove, explaining that Donna had come to the office claiming there was a family emergency, and she needed to take Mackenzie home. The secretary asked for identification, and Donna got angry, demanding to see her grandchild. And that's when the principal checked our emergency contacts and saw the note about the restraining order. They kept Donna in the office while security watched Mackenzie's classroom, and I could hear Donna yelling in the background about her rights as a grandmother. I got to the school at the same time as the police, and Officer Medina was there again, which felt like some kind of cosmic joke. She arrested Donna for violating a court order while Donna screamed that she just wanted to see her grandchild, and we were keeping her away unfairly. They put handcuffs on her and walked her to the police car, and I watched from the school entrance as my mother-in-law spent her first night in jail. Eric filed a motion the next morning to extend the restraining order to 2 years based on the violation. Donna's lawyer tried to argue she just wanted to see her grandchildren and didn't understand the restrictions, but the judge looked at the school's statement showing Donna was told about the restraining order and became aggressive. The judge pointed out that Donna was forbidden from all contact and chose to violate the order within 1 week, showing she had no respect for court authority or boundaries. The extension was granted immediately, and Eric said if Donna violated again, she'd face criminal charges beyond just contempt. Carl's extended family started calling within days, and the reaction split right down the middle. His aunt said we were too harsh, and Donna was just a lonely old woman who made mistakes, and I heard Carl tell her that lonely people don't file false police reports and show up at schools. His cousin shared her own story about Donna living with her family for 4 months and using the same threat patterns until they couldn't take it anymore. Carl's uncle said he wished he'd been brave enough to get a restraining order years ago when Donna lived with him and made his life miserable. We got texts and calls for weeks, some supportive and some critical, and Carl made a decision I was proud of. He told his aunt and uncle who defended Donna that we needed space from people who enabled her behavior, and we'd focus on relationships with family members who supported healthy boundaries. It cost him some relationships but gained him peace, and I watched him become stronger with each conversation where he chose our family over his mother's manipulation. I found Megan sitting on her bed that evening, holding a photo of her and Donna from 2 years ago, when things were still mostly okay. She looked up at me with those big eyes and asked if she'd ever see Grandma again. Carl sat down next to her and I took her other side and we told her the truth in words a kid could understand. Grandma made choices that weren't safe for our family. She used threats to get her way instead of talking about problems like grown-ups should. We explained that maybe someday when Grandma learns to respect boundaries and treat people kindly, but right now we need to protect our family from that behavior. Megan nodded slowly and asked if it was because Grandma kept saying she'd leave all the time. Carl looked surprised that she'd noticed, and I realized our kids had been watching this whole mess unfold, even when we thought we were hiding it. Megan said it made her feel scared when Grandma would start packing her bags over little things, like she was always about to disappear. We hugged her and promised that our family was stable now, that nobody was threatening to leave anymore. She seemed to understand in that way kids do when they've been living with tension for so long that relief feels obvious. Mackenzie wandered in and asked what we were talking about, and Megan explained it to her little sister in her own words. Grandma needed to learn to be nicer before she could visit again. Mackenzie just shrugged and said she liked it better now anyway because the house felt calmer, which broke my heart and validated our decision at the same time. 3 months after the restraining order, Eric called to say Donna's lawyer had sent a letter requesting supervised visitation with the grandchildren. He read it to me over the phone, and it was full of language about grandparents' rights and family relationships. But Eric said we were under no legal obligation to agree to anything. Carl and I talked about it that night after the kids went to bed. Part of him wanted to give his mother a chance because guilt is a powerful thing, but I reminded him about Megan's question and Mackenzie's relief. We weren't ready to expose our kids to Donna's manipulation again, supervised or not. The restraining order existed for a reason, and just because Donna was using her lawyer instead of showing up at schools didn't mean she'd changed. Carl agreed, and we told Eric to respond that we weren't interested in visitation at this time. Eric said he'd handle it professionally, and that was that. Eric helped us draft a response through his office that laid out exactly what we needed from Donna before we'd even consider letting her near our children again. She needed to complete therapy with a licensed professional who specialized in family dynamics and manipulation patterns. She needed to demonstrate genuine behavior change over a sustained period, not just promises and tears. She needed to respect our parenting decisions without threatening to leave or trying to undermine us. And none of this would happen before the restraining order expired naturally. We weren't going to reward her lawyer's letter by giving in early. Eric sent the response and we waited. 2 weeks later, he forwarded us Donna's lawyer's reply. She refused therapy because she didn't do anything wrong. She said our conditions were insulting, and she was the victim in all of this. She claimed we were keeping her grandchildren from her unfairly, and she wouldn't jump through hoops to see her own family. Eric said the response proved exactly why we made the right choice. Someone who refuses to acknowledge their behavior and get help isn't ready to be around kids who need healthy relationship models. We filed the letter away as evidence in case we needed to renew the restraining order later. Carl kept going to his therapy appointments every week, and I watched him get stronger each time. His therapist was helping him work through the guilt conditioning his mother had installed since childhood, teaching him that protecting his children wasn't betraying his mother. One afternoon, his aunt called and started in with the usual guilt trip about how Donna was his mother and family should forgive. I heard Carl take a deep breath, and then he said something that made me stop washing dishes to listen. He told his aunt that he loved his mother, but he wouldn't sacrifice his children's well-being to manage her feelings. He said his kids deserved to grow up without manipulation and threats hanging over their heads. His aunt tried to argue, but Carl stayed calm and firm, explaining that enabling Donna's behavior for decades was exactly why she never learned to treat people with respect. He said he was breaking that cycle, and if his aunt couldn't support healthy boundaries, then they needed space from each other too. He hung up and looked at me with this expression of pride mixed with sadness. I told him I'd never been more proud of his growth, and he said it felt scary, but right. 6 months after Donna left, our lives had completely transformed. The kids were thriving at Little Sprouts Learning Center, coming home every day with artwork and stories about their friends. Our finances had adjusted to the childcare costs after some tight months, and we'd cut back on eating out and unnecessary expenses. But the trade-off was worth every penny because our home felt peaceful in a way it hadn't in 2 years. We could make decisions about dinner or bedtime or weekend plans without calculating whether it would trigger Donna's threats. We reclaimed our master bedroom fully, painting over the marks from where Donna had hung her pictures, and replacing the curtains she'd chosen with ones we actually liked. The living room had our furniture again, arranged the way we wanted it. The kitchen stayed organized how I preferred without someone rearranging it as a power move. Megan was doing better in the school now that she wasn't stressed about Grandma's drama at home. Mackenzie had started sleeping through the night again. Carl and I were actually talking and laughing instead of walking on eggshells. The constant threat of Donna's manipulation wasn't hanging over every single decision we made anymore. Beth and I had started talking on the phone regularly, bonding over our shared experiences with Donna in ways that felt healing for both of us. She told me about the 8 months Donna lived with her family and used the exact same threat patterns, how it nearly destroyed her marriage and made her kids anxious. She said she wished she'd been brave enough to get a restraining order years ago instead of just throwing Donna out and dealing with 2 years of guilt trips afterward. I told her that watching her set boundaries with Donna during that phone call when I was packing gave me the courage to do the same. Beth had refused to take Donna in, and that validation from family meant everything in that moment. We compared notes on Donna's manipulation tactics like survivors of the same disaster, and it felt good to be understood by someone who'd lived through it. Beth sent me articles about narcissistic family dynamics, and we'd discuss them like we were studying for a test we'd already passed. She became a real friend instead of just Carl's aunt, and that was an unexpected gift from this whole mess. Beth called me one morning about 2 months later with news that didn't surprise either of us. Donna had moved to Florida to live near her friend Rose, the same Rose who'd texted warnings about Donna's behavior when I was packing her up. Beth said Rose had called her saying Donna was already using the same threat tactics. Apparently, Donna had been staying with Rose for 6 weeks and had already threatened to leave 3 times when Rose didn't do exactly what she wanted. Rose was at her breaking point and didn't know what to do. Beth warned Rose about the pattern based on everything we'd documented, explaining how Donna would escalate until Rose either gave in completely or threw her out. Beth offered to share our legal documents if Rose needed to protect herself, paying forward the support we'd received from Beth's honesty. Rose thanked her and said she'd already started looking into how to legally evict someone in Florida. I felt bad for Rose, but also validated that this wasn't personal to us. Donna did this to everyone. It was her pattern, her choice, her refusal to change. And now she was burning bridges in a whole new state. The restraining order came up for review at the 1-year mark, and we had to appear before the judge to decide whether to extend it or let it expire. Carl and I discussed it carefully over several nights, weighing the pros and cons. Part of us wanted to keep the protection in place because Donna had already violated it once. But another part of us felt like we'd made our point, and Donna had stayed away except through her lawyer. We decided to let it expire, but made clear to the judge that we'd immediately refile if Donna contacted us inappropriately or showed up uninvited anywhere. The judge noted our position in the record and said the order would expire as scheduled, but our documentation would remain on file for quick action if needed. We were giving Donna one chance to respect our boundaries voluntarily, instead of because a court forced her to. Eric thought it was risky but understood our reasoning. We wanted to see if Donna could control herself without legal consequences hanging over her head. 2 weeks after the restraining order expired, Eric forwarded us an email from Donna's lawyer. She wanted to rebuild the relationship and was asking what steps we needed from her. The email was brief and formal, but it was the first communication that didn't include threats or guilt trips. Eric helped us draft a response that outlined our expectations clearly. Donna needed to complete at least 6 months of therapy with a licensed family therapist and provide documentation of attendance and progress. She needed to respect our parenting decisions without criticism or attempts to undermine us. She needed to never use threats of leaving or abandonment as manipulation tactics. She needed to acknowledge the harm her behavior caused instead of playing the victim. And she needed to demonstrate these changes consistently over time, not just promise them in a letter. We sent the response and waited to see if she was serious about change or if this was just another manipulation attempt. Donna's response came back within 3 days, and it was exactly what we expected, but still disappointing. Her lawyer wrote that our conditions were unreasonable and insulting. Donna said she wouldn't jump through hoops to see her own grandchildren. She claimed she'd done nothing wrong, and we were the ones who needed to apologize for how we treated her. She said therapy was for people with problems, and she wasn't going to pretend she had problems just to satisfy our demands. The email ended with a veiled threat about grandparents' rights and how she had legal options if we continued to keep her from her family. We didn't respond. Eric filed the email as evidence in case we needed to renew the restraining order, creating a paper trail of Donna's refusal to change or take responsibility. We weren't surprised by her response, but it still hurt Carl to see his mother choose her pride over a relationship with her grandchildren. He said it made the decision easier, though, knowing she'd rather be right than be in their lives. Looking back now, I can see how those months after the restraining order expired became about Carl finding his own peace with everything. He stopped checking his phone every time it buzzed, hoping it might be his mother finally understanding what she'd done. He stopped explaining to people why we had to cut her off. One night, while putting Megan to bed, she asked if he missed his mom, and he sat on the edge of her bed for a long time before answering. He told her that he tried to help his grandmother change, but she has to want it for herself, and sometimes the best thing you can do for someone is let them figure out their own life. He started focusing all his energy on being present with our kids, making sure they understood that love shouldn't come with threats or conditions. He'd take them to the park and actually play with them instead of sitting on his phone worrying about his mother. He coached Mackenzie's soccer team and never missed one of Megan's piano recitals. He was breaking a cycle that had run through his family for who knows how many generations, and I watched him become lighter without that weight on his shoulders. A year and a half after Donna left, my phone rang from a Florida number I didn't recognize. It was Rose calling to tell me that Donna had some kind of minor health scare. Nothing serious, but she'd been asking for Carl. Rose sounded tired and said Donna was fine, but kept saying she needed to talk to her son. I handed the phone to Carl and watched his face go through about 5 different emotions before he agreed to one call with clear boundaries. He dialed Donna's number and put it on speaker so I could hear. The first thing out of her mouth was how she almost died and none of her children even cared enough to check on her. Carl stayed calm and asked what actually happened. She'd had some chest pain that turned out to be heartburn, but she went on and on about how scared she was and how alone she felt. Then came the guilt trip about how he abandoned her when she needed him most, how she raised him better than this. How could he leave his own mother to suffer by herself? Carl listened for maybe 3 minutes before he said he was glad she was okay, but he had to go. She started raising her voice, saying he couldn't just hang up on her like this, but he ended the call and blocked her number. His hands were shaking a little, but he looked relieved instead of guilty. 2 years after Donna moved out, we decided to celebrate by doing something we never could have done when she lived with us. We took the kids on a beach vacation to the Outer Banks, staying in a little rental house right on the water. The whole trip cost less than what we would have spent feeding Donna for 3 months. Megan and Mackenzie ran around on the sand and built castles and collected shells like normal happy kids. We ate ice cream for breakfast one day just because we could. Carl taught them both how to body surf, and I watched him laugh harder than I'd heard in years. One evening, while the kids were hunting for crabs, Carl mentioned that they barely talk about their grandmother anymore. Megan had asked about her maybe twice in the past 6 months, and Mackenzie seemed to have mostly forgotten about her. It felt both sad and healthy at the same time. Sad because kids shouldn't have to lose their grandmother, but healthy because they weren't growing up around someone who taught them that love meant manipulation. About a month after we got back from vacation, Jeremy called Carl sounding stressed. Donna had apparently contacted him asking if she could move in again, saying Florida wasn't working out and she needed family. Jeremy told us he said no immediately and gave her information about senior housing resources in the area. He said he was done enabling her pattern and she needed to figure out how to live on her own without using threats to control people. Carl's whole family seemed to finally be on the same page about not giving in to her anymore. Beth had stopped answering her calls entirely. Jeremy refused to let her stay even for a visit. The family was united in forcing Donna to deal with the consequences of burning every bridge she'd ever had. 3 months later, we got a letter in the mail from someone named Dr. Grace Baker. She introduced herself as Donna's therapist and said Donna wanted to rebuild her relationship with us. The letter asked if we'd be willing to participate in some family therapy sessions to work on reconciliation. I read it 3 times trying to figure out if this was another manipulation tactic. Carl and I talked about it for over a week, going back and forth about whether we should even consider it. Eric thought it could be a trap, but said if we decided to try it, we should set very strict ground rules. We finally agreed to try exactly 2 sessions with the understanding that we'd leave immediately if Donna started using her old manipulation tactics. I called Dr. Baker back and laid out our conditions. She had to respect that we'd walk out if Donna played the victim or refused to take responsibility. Dr. Baker said she understood and scheduled us for the following Tuesday. The therapy office was in a plain building near downtown, the kind of place that tried too hard to look calming with its beige walls and nature photos. Donna was already sitting in Dr. Baker's office when we arrived, and she looked older than I remembered. Thinner, too. The session started tense, with nobody really knowing what to say. Dr. Baker did most of the talking at first, explaining how family patterns develop and how threats can damage relationships over time. Then she asked Donna to talk about why she used the leaving threat so often. Donna was quiet for a long time before she finally spoke. She said she was scared of being unwanted and alone, and threatening to leave gave her some control over when people would reject her. It was the first time I'd ever heard her admit that her behavior was about her own fears, instead of blaming everyone else. Dr. Baker asked her what she thought the threats actually created, and Donna said quietly that they probably pushed people away faster. Carl asked her why she filed the false abuse report, and Donna actually admitted she did it because she was angry and wanted to hurt me. The session ended with Dr. Baker saying this was good progress, but I left feeling cautiously hopeful at best. The second session the following week went completely differently. Donna started by saying she'd been thinking about everything, and she felt like we made her feel unwanted by not accepting how she did things. Dr. Baker tried to redirect her, but Donna kept talking over her, listing all the ways we'd been ungrateful and difficult. She said if we'd just let her be herself and stopped criticizing everything, none of this would have happened. Carl stayed calm and told her that her threats created the exact abandonment she was afraid of, and until she could take responsibility for her own actions instead of blaming us, nothing would change. Donna got defensive and said she shouldn't have to change who she is just to have a relationship with her grandchildren. I stood up and said we were leaving. Dr. Baker didn't try to stop us. Donna called after us that we were proving her point about not accepting her, but we walked out and drove home in silence. Dr. Baker called me 2 days later and apologized. She said Donna wasn't ready for genuine reconciliation and was still stuck in victim thinking. She'd made some progress in the first session, but couldn't maintain it when faced with actually taking responsibility. Dr. Baker said she'd continue working with Donna individually, but recommended we pause any contact until Donna demonstrated real sustained change through therapy, which might never happen. I thanked her for being honest instead of pushing us to keep trying for the sake of trying. Carl seemed relieved that a professional confirmed what we already knew. We decided to move forward with our lives and let Donna figure out her own path. 3 years after Donna moved out of our house, we were genuinely happy in a way we hadn't been in a long time. Our family felt stronger and healthier. Carl had built real relationships with his siblings based on mutual respect instead of shared guilt about their mother. Jeremy and his wife came over for dinner regularly, and we actually enjoyed spending time together. Beth and I texted often, and she'd become like the mother figure I never had. The kids were growing up learning that love doesn't include manipulation or threats, that boundaries are healthy, that you don't have to accept bad treatment from family just because they're family. Megan was doing great in the school and had good friends whose parents we actually knew and liked. Mackenzie was confident and happy and never walked on eggshells anymore. Carl and I had reclaimed our master bedroom and our living room and our kitchen and our entire lives. We made decisions based on what was best for our family instead of managing someone else's emotions. The peace in our home was real and solid and worth every hard conversation and legal battle it took to get here. Right before Christmas that year, a card arrived in the mail with no return address. Inside was a simple message in Donna's handwriting saying she hoped we were well and she missed the kids. That was it. No guilt trips about being alone during the holidays, no threats or manipulation, no demands to see them or accusations about keeping them from her. Just a brief statement that felt almost like a real attempt at respecting boundaries. We didn't respond to the card, but I kept it in a drawer. Carl said maybe it meant she was starting to understand what we'd been trying to tell her all along. Maybe the therapy was actually helping. Or maybe she'd just run out of people to manipulate and was trying a different approach. Either way, we weren't ready to let her back in, but the card felt like the smallest possible sign that change might be happening somewhere in her, even if we'd never see the results. I started cooking Sunday dinners again, real meals with vegetables and protein instead of the processed garbage Donna used to buy. Megan helped me chop carrots while Mackenzie set the table with our good dishes, the ones we'd kept in storage for 2 years because Donna didn't like them. We established movie nights every Friday where the kids picked the film and we made popcorn on the stove, something Donna never allowed because she thought microwave popcorn was easier. The master bedroom became our space again, and I hung photos of our family on the walls instead of Donna's weird paintings of beaches she'd never visited. Carl built shelves in the living room for our books, replacing the dusty figurines Donna had displayed everywhere. The kitchen drawer organizers went back to my system, and I could find the potato peeler without searching through Donna's chaotic arrangement. We started having friends over for dinner parties, something we'd stopped doing because Donna would monopolize conversations and make people uncomfortable. Our house felt alive again instead of like a museum dedicated to keeping one person happy. The kids invited friends over after school and played in the living room without worrying about breaking Donna's rules about noise or mess. We planted a garden in the backyard, something Donna had refused to allow because she thought it looked trashy. Megan grew tomatoes and Mackenzie planted sunflowers, and they checked on them every morning before school. Carl sat with me on the porch one evening while the kids played in the yard, watching the sunset without anyone threatening to ruin the moment. He told me that standing up to his mother was harder than anything he'd faced in his life, scarier than changing careers or becoming a parent. But he said it saved our marriage because I was ready to leave if things didn't change, and he knew it even though I never said it out loud. He was proud that he broke the cycle his family had run on for generations, where everyone enabled Donna's behavior because confronting her seemed impossible. His brother called him last week to say thank you for showing him it was possible to set boundaries, that Jeremy felt free for the first time in his adult life. Carl's voice shook when he said he wished he'd done it sooner, before we lost 2 years of our lives to managing his mother's threats. But he was grateful we did it before our kids grew up thinking manipulation was normal, before Megan and Mackenzie learned that love meant walking on eggshells and sacrificing your own needs to keep someone else from leaving. Looking back at that morning when I helped Donna pack, I remembered how my hands shook while I folded her clothes. I was terrified she'd actually leave and we'd have no childcare, terrified Carl would resent me forever, terrified I was making a huge mistake. But I was more terrified of living another day in that hostage situation, watching my kids learn that threats were an acceptable way to get what you want. Her threat to leave only worked because we gave it power, because we acted like her leaving would destroy us instead of free us. The moment I said okay and started packing, her weapon disappeared and she had nothing left. She tried every manipulation tactic she knew that night, but none of them worked once we accepted that her leaving was actually the best outcome. Taking back control meant accepting the thing she'd been threatening us with for 2 years, and once we did that, we took back our entire lives. We make decisions now based on what's best for Megan and Mackenzie, not on managing someone else's emotions or avoiding threats. The kids are genuinely happy, laughing more and bringing home better grades because they're not stressed all the time. Carl and I talk through disagreements instead of avoiding them to prevent Donna from using them against us. We learned that protecting your peace sometimes means letting toxic people follow through on their threats, that calling a bluff is terrifying but necessary, and that the life you get back is worth every hard conversation and scary moment it takes to reclaim it. Gamer Bros harassed me at a tournament. They didn't know I was their reigning champ. I'd been competing under the gamertag Void Killer for 3 years. Nobody knew the faceless champion who'd won 5 major tournaments was actually a 19-year-old girl named Ashley. The second I walked into the tournament hall, a group of guys at the registration table started laughing. The tallest one, wearing a jersey with Calvin on the back, asked if I was lost because the anime convention was next door. His friend Otto asked if my boyfriend was competing and offered to show me where the girlfriend section was. When I said I was registering to compete, Calvin spit out his energy drink. She thinks she can hang with real players because she beat her little brother at Mario Kart once. Otto grabbed my registration form and read it in a high-pitched voice. Kevin said I probably used a controller with pink buttons. Calvin grabbed my wrist and forced my hand into position, explaining that real gamers used claw grip. He pressed down until my knuckles cracked. Otto dumped out my equipment, holding up my custom mouse and laughing that it was probably programmed with macros because girls always needed to cheat. When I answered their quiz questions perfectly, Otto accused me of Googling and demanded my phone. Kevin went through my photos making comments about OnlyFans. Calvin noticed my competitor badge and his face went red. He held it up and screamed that diversity quotas were destroying competitive gaming. He cornered me against the registration table and put his hand over my mouth when I tried to speak. His hand pressed so hard I tasted blood. Kevin grabbed my mouse and stepped on the cable until it sparked. Calvin leaned in and whispered, "After I'm done with you, I'm going to find every girl at this tournament and tell them exactly what happens when they try to invade male spaces." The tournament organizer called our pool to the main stage. My hands were trembling so badly I shoved them in my pockets. 3 years of dominating online, and these guys had made me feel like that scared 12-year-old who first got told she didn't belong in voice chat. I sat down at my assigned computer. The screen loaded my account. Void Killer. Calvin was 2 seats away. I watched him glance at my screen, then freeze. He looked at my face. Back, at the screen. His jaw dropped. "No way," he whispered. The commentators' voices boomed through the speakers. "And we have a special treat today, folks. 5-time champion Void Killer is competing in person for the first time ever." The crowd erupted. People were standing, trying to see who was sitting at my station. Calvin's face drained of color. Otto and Kevin were frantically whispering to each other. The first match started. Calvin versus me. He was shaking so badly he could barely click. I destroyed him in 4 minutes, the shortest match in tournament history for that bracket. The crowd went insane. Otto lasted 6 minutes. Kevin lasted 5. After each match, I stood up and looked them directly in the eyes. Said nothing. Just let them sit with it. By the finals, the story had spread through the entire hall. People had footage of Calvin's crew harassing me at registration. Someone had recorded Kevin destroying my mouse. Another person caught Calvin covering my mouth. The tournament organizers pulled all 3 aside during the semifinal break. When they came back, their faces were gray. I won the tournament. 6th championship. When I lifted the trophy, the crowd chanted, "Void Killer," so loud the walls shook. The post-match interview went viral. The host asked about competing in person for the first time. I told the truth. Every detail about what Calvin and his friends had done. The footage was everywhere within hours. Gaming news sites picked it up. Then mainstream outlets. Calvin's team dropped him before the sunset. Otto lost his streaming partnership. Kevin's sponsorship deals evaporated overnight. 3 weeks later, the tournament organization announced a permanent ban on all 3. Lifetime. No appeals. Calvin tried to apologize publicly, posted a video saying he'd made mistakes and was working on himself. The comments were disabled within an hour. I got messages from hundreds of girls after that. Girls who'd quit competitive gaming because of guys like Calvin. Girls who'd never entered tournaments because they were afraid of exactly what happened to me. I started a mentorship program. Paired experienced female players with newcomers, gave them someone to sit with at LANs, someone who'd already faced the Calvins of the world and won. Last month, one of my mentees won her first regional tournament. She's 15. Her gamertag is Ashley's Mouse because she uses the same model I do. After her victory, a guy in the crowd yelled that she probably cheated. She grabbed the microphone and said, "My mentor is Void Killer. You want to say that again?" The room went silent. Then the crowd started laughing. At him. That's the thing about spaces people say you don't belong in. You don't just take them. You hold them open for everyone who comes after you. Calvin streams to about 40 viewers now. Mostly bots. Sometimes I check in just to watch his numbers. Petty? Maybe. But I earned it. I opened Calvin's stream a few days later and watched the viewer count sit at 32. Half the chat is just bots spamming crypto scam links. The other half is maybe 3 actual people asking when he'll play his main game again. He can't. The bans make sure of that. I watch for 5 minutes, then close the tab. The satisfaction hits different every time I check in. My inbox won't stop filling up. Every time I clear 20 messages, 30 more appear. Girls sharing stories about guys who grabbed their controllers at LANs. Girls who got followed to their cars after tournaments. Girls who stopped competing because someone told them they only won because the other player went easy on them. I read every single message. I respond when I can, usually late at night when I should be sleeping. Each story makes me angrier about how normal everyone treated this stuff. Like it was just part of gaming culture instead of harassment that should have gotten people banned years ago. Moira Osborne emails me 3 weeks after the tournament. She's one of the main organizers, the woman who actually runs registration and handles competitor issues. Her email is short and direct. She wants to know if I'd help develop an anti-harassment protocol for future events. Real policies with actual consequences, not just a code of conduct buried on page 7 of the rulebook that nobody enforces. I write back within an hour. Yes. Absolutely yes. Because words on paper mean nothing without someone who lived it helping write them. We spend 3 weeks on video calls drafting the policies. Moira pulls in 2 other organizers and a lawyer who specializes in event safety. I tell them exactly what happened at registration. The wrist grabbing, the equipment destruction, Calvin's hand over my mouth. I make them understand that harassment doesn't just happen during matches. It starts the second women walk through the door. The policies we write cover everything. Mandatory harassment training for all competitors before they can register. Immediate removal for physical intimidation. Lifetime bans for documented patterns of abuse. The policies protect competitors from registration through post-event interactions, including online harassment afterward. Moira pushes to include a reporting system where witnesses can submit evidence anonymously. The lawyer makes sure everything is enforceable and won't get the organization sued. The first tournament using the new protocols happens 2 months later. I register as both competitor and observer. Moira wants me there to see how enforcement actually works in real time. I arrive early and watch registration from across the hall. A guy in a green jersey walks up to the table where a girl is filling out her forms. He leans over her shoulder and says something about her appearance. I can't hear the exact words, but I see her shoulders tense. Security is there in under 2 minutes. 2 staff members in yellow vests pull the guy aside before he can say anything else. I watch the security team talk to him near the wall. They're calm but firm. One of them pulls out a printed sheet and points to specific sections while explaining the new policies. The guy's face goes from confused to shocked to red. They give him a formal warning that goes straight into his competitor file. 3 strikes and he's banned for life. He looks completely shocked that anyone actually cares about a comment. That tells me everything about how things used to be. How many girls heard worse and nobody did anything because it was just how tournaments were. The girl he targeted finishes her registration and walks toward the practice area. She stops when she sees me. She knows who I am. Everyone here knows who I am after the viral interview. She approaches slowly, like she's not sure if I want to be bothered. She thanks me by name. Says she almost didn't register for this tournament because she was scared of exactly what just got prevented. Her voice shakes when she talks about watching my interview and deciding to try competing in person for the first time. That conversation stays with me for days. I keep thinking about how close she came to not showing up. How many others made that choice and stayed home? I compete in the tournament and win. My 7th championship. During the post-match interview, the host asks about the new harassment policies. I dedicate the win to every girl who quit gaming because someone made them feel unwelcome. The crowd reaction is even louder than my 6th win. People are standing and chanting. Some of them are holding signs with messages supporting the new policies. The energy in the room feels different from any tournament I've competed in before. Cleo Darling contacts me a week after the tournament. She's a gaming journalist who's been covering esports for 5 years. Her email explains that she wants to interview me for a longer feature about women in competitive gaming. Not just my story, but the bigger picture of what's changing in the scene. I agree because she promises to center other voices, not just mine. Too many articles about harassment focus only on the victim's story and ignore everyone else fighting the same battles. We meet for the interview at a coffee shop near the tournament venue. Cleo brings a recorder and a notebook filled with questions. She asks about the hundreds of messages I received after the viral interview. I tell her each one represented someone who'd been failed by the community. Someone who faced harassment and got told it was just part of gaming. Someone who reported abuse and watched organizers do nothing. Cleo writes everything down, then looks up and asks if I've thought about doing something more structured than individual responses. Something that could help more people at once instead of one message at a time. I spend the next few days thinking about what she said. The question keeps coming back to me while I'm practicing, while I'm reading messages, while I'm trying to sleep. One by one isn't working anymore. My inbox has over 300 unread messages now, and that number grows every single day. I can't keep up with individual responses and still compete, and still have any kind of normal life. The mentorship program idea starts taking shape in my head, but I don't know what it would actually look like. I just know something has to change, because what I'm doing now isn't enough. I email Moira and ask if we can talk about something bigger than just the harassment policies. She responds within an hour asking when I'm free. We meet at the same coffee shop where I did the interview with the journalist. Moira brings her laptop and a notebook, and looks genuinely excited when I explain the mentorship program concept. Pairing experienced female players with newcomers who need support and guidance. Giving them someone to sit with at tournaments so they don't walk into registration alone like I did. She loves it immediately and starts taking notes before I even finish explaining. She tells me the tournament organization has resources they can dedicate to this. Meeting space, promotional support, maybe even some funding for equipment if mentees need it. We spend 2 hours mapping out the basic structure, and by the end of the meeting I feel like this might actually work. The next 3 weeks are all about building the application system. Moira handles the technical side while I focus on what questions we need to ask. Mentees describe their experience level, what games they play, what kind of support they're looking for, whether they need help with strategy, with handling tournament pressure, with just having someone there who understands. Mentors specify what they can offer based on their own experience and availability. The whole point is making matches that actually mean something instead of just randomly pairing people up and hoping it works. We launch the application process, and I post about it on my social media. Within 24 hours, we have 47 mentee applications and 12 mentor applications. The mentee numbers don't surprise me, but I was worried we wouldn't get enough experienced players willing to mentor. 12 is a solid start, though. I read through every single mentee application personally. Some of them are heartbreaking. Girls who quit competing after harassment. Girls who never started because they were too scared. Girls who play online but can't imagine walking into a tournament venue alone. One application is from a 17-year-old named Heather, who describes herself as skilled enough to compete, but terrified of attending events without support. She's been playing for 4 years, has strong mechanics, knows the meta inside and out. But she's never been to a single LAN because the idea of walking in alone makes her physically sick. I accept her as one of my personal mentees immediately. We start video chatting twice a week to practice together. She's even better than her application suggested. Her game sense is incredible and her execution is clean. The only thing holding her back is fear, and I know exactly how that feels. I promise her I'll sit with her at her first tournament, and I mean it. I'm not letting her walk into that venue the way I walked into mine. The other mentors start connecting with their mentees, and Moira sets up monthly check-ins to make sure the matches are working. Most of them are going really well. A few pairs realize they're not compatible, and we rematch them with other people. The flexibility is important because forcing connections that don't work helps nobody. 2 months after we launch the program, Heather tells me she's ready to register for a tournament. It's smaller and regional. Not one of the major circuits, but it's still a huge step for her. I clear my schedule to be there. Registration day arrives and I meet Heather outside the venue. She's shaking so badly she drops her equipment bag twice before we even get to the door. I pick it up for her and carry it inside. At the registration table, she can barely hold the pen to fill out her forms. Her hands are trembling and she keeps apologizing. I tell her there's nothing to apologize for and help her complete the paperwork. I stay right next to her through the entire process, making it completely clear she's not alone. Other competitors glance at us and I see recognition in some of their faces. They know who I am. Nobody says anything inappropriate. The tournament starts and Heather wins her first match, then her second, then her third. She makes it all the way to semifinals before losing to a player who's been competing for 5 years. After the match, she's practically glowing despite the loss. She tells me that just participating without anyone making her feel unwelcome is worth more than any trophy. That feeling of safety and belonging matters more than the competitive results. I understand exactly what she means. 3 months after launching the program, we have 15 active mentor-mentee pairs, and Moira suggests we create a private Discord server for everyone. The community aspect becomes just as valuable as the individual mentoring relationships. People share strategies, discuss tournaments, vent about bad experiences, celebrate victories. It's the support network I wish had existed when I started competing. I keep entering tournaments myself because staying visible matters. 4 months after everything with Calvin, I win my 8th championship. Standing on that stage holding the trophy feels different now. I'm not just winning for myself anymore. Every victory proves that speaking up didn't end my career. Every championship shows that you can call out harassment and still succeed. The weight of that responsibility sits heavy, but I wouldn't trade it for anything. A new application comes in from a 14-year-old named Bridget. Her essay talks about watching my viral interview and deciding she wanted to compete despite being scared. She describes years of playing online while hiding her identity, avoiding voice chat, never revealing she was a girl. She says seeing me win after everything that happened made her believe maybe she could compete too. I accept her application before I even finish reading it. This is exactly why I started the program. Bridget reminds me so much of myself at that age, it's almost strange. The same aggressive playstyle, the same fear of being visible, the same hunger to compete mixed with terror of what might happen if she shows up in person. She's naturally talented in ways that can't be taught, but she's never played at a LAN, never sat at a tournament station, never felt the pressure of competing with people watching. We start working together, and I can see her potential immediately. She just needs someone to help her believe she belongs there. We start meeting twice a week over video calls, and I walk her through everything I know about competitive play. The first few sessions focus on mechanics and strategy, but I quickly realize she needs more than that. I teach her breathing exercises for when the pressure builds during matches. I show her how to recognize when someone is trying to get in her head and how to block it out. I explain the mental tricks I use when my hands start shaking or my heart races too fast. She practices on stream while I watch and give feedback in real time. After each session, I send her notes about what worked and what needs adjustment. The improvement happens fast, because she's naturally talented and willing to put in the work. 4 weeks in, she asks me the question I've been waiting for. She wants to know if people will treat her the way Calvin treated me. I pause the recording and think about how to answer honestly without scaring her off. I tell her some people might try, but the environment has changed since my incident. Tournament organizers actually enforce harassment policies now. Other players are more likely to speak up when they see something wrong. The community isn't perfect, but it's better than it was. I promise her I'll be there at her first tournament sitting in the audience where she can see me. She goes quiet for a minute, then thanks me in a voice that sounds relieved. We keep practicing, and I watch her confidence grow with each session. She starts playing more aggressively and taking risks that pay off. Her reaction time improves, and her strategy gets sharper. By the time her first tournament comes around, she's ready, even if she doesn't fully believe it yet. The regional qualifier happens on a Saturday morning at a convention center 2 hours from my apartment. I drive there early and find a seat in the audience section with a clear view of the competitor stations. I'm wearing my Void Killer jersey so she can spot me easily when she looks up. The venue fills up fast, and I watch players register at the same tables where Calvin cornered me 8 months ago. Everything looks different now. Security walks the floor checking badges. Staff members wear shirts that say, "Ask me about our harassment policy," in bright letters. The atmosphere feels safer, even though I know one tournament doesn't fix everything. Bridget arrives looking nervous, and I catch her eye from across the room. She gives me a small wave, and I see her shoulders relax slightly. She registers without incident and heads to her assigned station. The first match starts, and she wins cleanly against an opponent who clearly underestimated her. The second match takes longer, but she adapts her strategy mid-game and pulls out a victory. By the third match, other people in the audience are starting to notice her aggressive playstyle. She's playing exactly like I taught her, with the same calculated risks and fast decision-making. I watch her destroy her third opponent and feel this surge of pride that catches me off guard. This is what the mentorship program was supposed to create. Her fourth match puts her against a guy who's been competing for 3 years. The match starts well, and she takes an early lead. Then I hear him muttering something I can't make out from the audience. Bridget's shoulders tense and her gameplay hesitates for just a second. I lean forward in my seat, willing her to look up. She glances toward the audience and our eyes meet. I nod once and she takes a visible breath. Then she destroys him. Not just wins, but completely dominates in a way that leaves no room for doubt about her skill. The guy's face goes red and he shoves back from his station when the match ends. Bridget stands up and walks past him without saying a word. I see her fighting back a smile as she heads to the waiting area. During the break between rounds, she finds me in the crowd. She tells me that moment when she looked up and saw me there changed everything. She says it felt like taking back power she didn't even know she'd lost. The words hit me hard because I remember that exact feeling. The tournament continues and Bridget keeps winning. She makes it through the semifinals and into the finals against a player who's ranked in the top 50 regionally. The final match is close and the crowd gets loud. I'm on my feet with everyone else watching her execute strategies we practiced together. She wins the deciding round and the announcer calls her name as the tournament champion. Bridget stands up from her station and points directly at me in the audience before accepting her trophy. I'm not ashamed to admit I cry a little. Watching her hold that trophy feels more important than any of my own championships. This is what happens when someone gets the support I never had starting out. The local gaming news covers her win that afternoon. The article mentions she's part of my mentorship program and includes quotes from her post-match interview about having support from experienced players. Within hours, my inbox fills with new applications from girls who want the same kind of mentoring. The program email gets so many messages that Moira has to help me sort through them. We spend the next week reviewing applications and realize we need to expand significantly to accommodate everyone. The demand is way bigger than either of us expected. Moira starts reaching out to other experienced female players, asking if they'd be willing to mentor. She gets responses from pros I've competed against and respected community members who want to help. Within 3 weeks, we grow from 15 mentor pairs to 40 spanning different games and skill levels. The program becomes something bigger than I ever imagined when I first started answering messages from girls who'd been harassed. I check Calvin's stream one night out of habit. His viewer count sits at 28 and half of them have bot names. He's playing a completely different game because the permanent bans keep him out of his original specialty. He can't enter any sanctioned tournaments or partner with legitimate organizations. The bans are thorough and permanent across every major gaming platform. I watch for a few minutes and notice how his commentary sounds defeated. He's not the same loud, aggressive person who cornered me at registration. The consequences broke something in him that won't come back. I close the stream, feeling that familiar satisfaction. Some people call it petty, but I earned the right to watch his career stay dead. Otto shows up on gaming forums every few weeks under different usernames trying to participate in strategy discussions or tournament predictions. Someone always recognizes his writing style or catches him referencing details only he would know from his banned accounts. The callouts happen fast and public. Forum moderators delete his posts and ban the new accounts within hours of someone identifying him. I watch it happen on 3 different forums over 2 months, and the pattern never changes. He tries to blend in and contribute like nothing happened, but the community won't let him forget. Gaming forums keep detailed records of harassment incidents, and his name comes up in every major discussion about tournament safety. Some people screenshot his attempts to rejoin and post them with warnings about who he really is. The documented footage of him destroying my mouse gets linked every single time. Kevin disappeared completely after losing his sponsorships. His social media accounts went dark the same week the bans were announced. I heard through other competitors that he took a job doing IT support at some regular company nowhere near the gaming industry. No streams, no tournament appearances, no presence in any gaming spaces online or in person. A few people who knew him before said he tried explaining what happened as a misunderstanding, but the video evidence made that impossible. The footage shows exactly what he did, and there's no way to spin it differently. His career ended, and he had to start over in a completely different field. Some consequences stick forever and close doors that never open again. Meanwhile, Heather wins her first major tournament 8 months after joining the mentorship program. I'm watching the stream when it happens, and the victory feels almost as good as my own championships. She beats a player who's been competing professionally for 3 years, and the final match isn't even close. Heather executes everything we practiced together with perfect timing and confidence. The post-match interview shows her talking about the mentorship program and crediting the support system for helping her compete without fear. 2 other mentees place in the top 10 at different regional events that same month. Another girl from the program makes semifinals at a qualifier tournament and gets noticed by a professional team's scouts. The success stories start piling up faster than I can track them all. Every victory proves the program works and creates space for more girls to compete. Moira sends me updates about new applications coming in after each mentee wins something. The momentum builds on itself as more people see that female competitors can succeed when they have proper support. Lynette contacts me through email asking if I'd be interested in speaking on a panel at a major gaming convention about building inclusive competitive spaces. She works in esports event management and saw the coverage of my story, plus the mentorship program growth. The convention is one of the biggest annual gaming events with tens of thousands of attendees and streaming coverage that reaches millions. She wants me to share my experience and talk about practical changes that actually work beyond just posting statements on social media. Requested Reads is on Spotify now. Check out link in the description or comments. I agree immediately because visibility matters more than comfort. The more people who hear directly from someone who faced harassment and fought back, the harder it becomes to pretend the problem doesn't exist. I've never done public speaking like this before, but the opportunity to reach that many people at once is too important to pass up. The panel happens 3 months later in a massive convention hall with every seat filled and people standing along the back wall. I share the stage with 4 other female pros and 2 advocates who work on harassment prevention in gaming spaces. The moderator asks each of us to talk about our experiences and what actual change looks like instead of empty corporate promises. I tell my story starting with Calvin at registration and ending with the mentorship program's current success. I don't soften any details about the harassment or how the gaming community initially failed to protect competitors. The audience stays completely silent while I talk, and I can see people in the front rows taking notes. When I finish describing how the permanent bans and new protocols made a measurable difference, the applause is loud enough that the moderator has to wait. The other panelists share similar stories about harassment and the institutional failures that enabled it for years. We talk honestly about how most gaming organizations only started caring after viral incidents forced their hand. The discussion covers everything from registration safety to social media harassment to the casual sexism that still exists in gaming culture. Nobody holds back or tries to make it comfortable for people who don't want to hear it. During the question and answer section, a girl who looks maybe 12 or 13 raises her hand and asks how to deal with being scared to compete in person. Her voice shakes when she talks about wanting to enter tournaments, but being terrified of getting treated the way I was. I lean forward to the microphone and tell her about the mentorship program. I explain how it works and give her the application website so she can find someone to support her at events. I mention that being scared is completely normal and doesn't mean she shouldn't compete. The fear comes from knowing the risks are real, but having support makes those risks manageable. Other people in the audience pull out their phones to write down the website, and at least 6 more people ask for the information again during the remaining question time. After the panel ends, I get surrounded by attendees wanting to talk more about the program or share their own harassment stories. I stand there for over an hour, answering questions and listening to people describe experiences almost identical to mine. Every conversation reinforces why this work matters beyond my own vindication. That convention appearance leads to 3 more speaking invitations within 2 weeks. Other gaming events want me on panels or doing solo presentations about harassment prevention and mentorship programs. I realize I'm becoming a spokesperson for something much bigger than my personal story. The role is exhausting because it means constantly reliving the worst experience of my competitive career in front of audiences. Every panel requires me to describe Calvin's hand over my mouth, and the blood I tasted, and the fear I felt walking to that first match. But the impact makes the exhaustion worthwhile. After each speaking event, the mentorship program gets dozens of new applications, and other experienced players reach out, offering to become mentors. The visibility creates real growth and reaches people who never would have found the program otherwise. I'm tired, but I keep accepting invitations because turning them down means missing opportunities to create change. I compete in my 9th championship tournament 6 months after starting the mentorship program and win against a field of over 200 competitors. The victory feels different from my earlier championships because now it means something beyond personal achievement. When I lift the trophy, the crowd chants "Void Killer," like always. But this time, I'm thinking about Heather and Bridget, and all the other mentees who are watching. During the post-match interview, the host asks about balancing competitive gaming with running the mentorship program. I tell him the mentees remind me why winning matters in the first place. Every championship I take proves that speaking up about harassment didn't end my career the way Calvin threatened it would. Every trophy shows younger players that they can compete and succeed and demand better treatment without sacrificing their place in gaming. The mentees have given me purpose beyond just being the best player. They've turned my competitive drive into something that helps other people, instead of just feeding my own ego. Bridget messages me 2 weeks later asking if I'll be at a major tournament coming up in 3 months. It's the same circuit where I won my first championship 4 years ago. She's applying to compete and wants to know if I'll be there to support her. I write back immediately that I wouldn't miss it for anything. This tournament matters more than most because it's her first major event, the kind with serious competition and professional scouts watching. Regional tournaments are important, but major circuit events are where careers get launched. I've been working with Bridget for almost a year now, and watching her confidence grow from terrified newcomer to someone ready to compete at the highest levels. She's prepared for this and deserves the opportunity to prove herself on a big stage. The tournament venue is massive with hundreds of competitors registered and streaming coverage that will reach millions of viewers across multiple platforms. The main competition hall has stadium seating for spectators and professional broadcasting equipment everywhere. Bridget is nervous when we meet up before registration, but she's also prepared. We spent the last month practicing specifically for this tournament's format and competition level. I walk with her through registration to make sure nobody gives her problems and stay nearby while she sets up her equipment at the practice stations. I can see her hands shaking slightly, but she's holding it together. Before her first match, I remind her that she belongs here just as much as anyone else competing. She earned her spot through skill, and nobody can take that away from her. I tell her I'll be in the audience watching every match and that she should look for me whenever she needs to remember she's not alone. She nods and takes a deep breath before heading to her assigned station. I find my seat in the spectator section where she can easily spot me and settle in to watch her compete at the highest level she's ever faced. Her first match starts against someone ranked way below her skill level, but she plays clean and focused anyway. I watch from my seat as she takes control early and closes it out without any showboating. The second match is tougher, but she adapts to her opponent's style and wins in straight rounds. Between matches, she glances up at me in the audience, and I give her a small nod. The third match puts her against a player I recognize from other tournaments, and she handles the pressure without falling apart. Nobody makes comments about her gender or questions whether she belongs there. The other competitors treat her like any other skilled player trying to advance through brackets. I notice guys at nearby stations watching her matches with genuine interest in her gameplay instead of looking for reasons to dismiss her. The tournament staff interacts with her normally during equipment checks and match coordination. This is what I wanted when I started the mentorship program: competitors judging each other purely on skill instead of assuming girls don't belong. The culture shift isn't complete everywhere, but it's happening in spaces like this where consequences for harassment are real and enforced. Bridget makes it to semifinals, which blows my mind because this is her first major tournament and she's already placing higher than players who've been competing for years. Her semifinal opponent has 5 years on the circuit and multiple top 10 finishes at events like this. I can see the experience gap in how he controls the pace and reads her patterns. She puts up a real fight and takes one round off him, but he closes it out in the end. When the match ends, she sits there for a second, looking disappointed, but then she stands up and shakes his hand properly. I meet her outside the competition area after she collects her equipment. She tells me she wished she'd played better in those last 2 rounds. I remind her that making semifinals at her first major is incredible, and most competitors would kill for that placement. She nods, but I can tell she's already analyzing what she could have done differently. That competitive drive is exactly what will make her even better next time. The tournament organizers pull her for a quick post-match interview because her run through brackets got attention from the streaming audience. She sits down in front of the camera looking nervous at first, but then settles in when they start asking questions. The interviewer asks how she prepared for her first major, and she talks about the mentorship program, and how having experienced players to practice with changed everything. She mentions specific things I taught her about staying calm under pressure and not letting intimidation tactics throw off her game. The interviewer asks if she faced any harassment during the tournament, and she says everyone treated her with respect and judged her purely on her gameplay. She credits the new tournament policies and the cultural shift happening in competitive gaming. The interview runs about 8 minutes, and she comes across as genuine and thoughtful instead of giving standard, boring answers. The clips start spreading across gaming social media within hours. People share her comments about the mentorship program and tag our official accounts. The response is overwhelmingly positive, with players asking how to apply and experienced competitors offering to volunteer as mentors. Applications to the mentorship program absolutely explode after Bridget's interview goes viral. We get triple our normal monthly applications in just 3 days. I'm trying to process them all, but there's no way we can match everyone with the current number of mentors we have. Moira contacts me saying we need to create a waitlist because we're completely overwhelmed. She starts reaching out to every experienced female player she knows, asking them to consider joining as mentors. Some say yes immediately after seeing Bridget's interview. Others need more information about time commitment and what mentoring actually involves. We put together better documentation about expectations and training resources for new mentors. Moira sets up group video calls where current mentors can talk to potential new ones about their experiences. The recruiting push is intense, but necessary because we can't leave hundreds of applicants hanging without support. I'm competing in the same major tournament as Bridget, and my matches are scheduled for the next day. Walking into the venue feels different now compared to my first in-person tournament 3 years ago. Nobody questions whether I belong here or makes comments about my gender. Other competitors nod at me or say quick hellos between matches. Some newer players look nervous around me, but that's about my skill level, not about being female. I move through my early brackets without much trouble. The competition gets harder in later rounds, but I've been doing this long enough that I know how to adjust. My semifinal match goes the distance, and I barely pull it out. The finals opponent is someone I've faced online before, and we both know each other's tendencies. The match is close, but I take it in the end. 10th championship. When they hand me the trophy, I feel this weird mix of pride and disbelief. I started competing anonymously at 16 because I was scared of exactly what happened at that first in-person tournament. Never imagined I'd make it to double-digit championships. The victory is sweet and satisfying, but honestly, the mentorship work feels more meaningful now. Winning proves I'm the best player, but helping others compete safely proves the community can actually change. During my championship interview, the host brings up the mentorship program and how much it's grown since I started it. I use the platform to emphasize that we desperately need more experienced players to step up as mentors. The demand is massive and we can't meet it with our current volunteer base. I explain that mentoring doesn't require being a champion-level player, just someone with tournament experience who can guide newcomers through the process. The host asks what kind of time commitment it involves, and I break down the typical schedule of video practice sessions and attending events together. I make it clear that we provide training and resources for new mentors, so they're not figuring it out alone. The interview reaches a huge audience because championship matches get the most viewership. That same night, 3 professional players contact me directly offering to join as mentors. They all mention seeing the interview and wanting to contribute to the cultural shift. One of them has been competing for 7 years and says she wished something like this existed when she started. Another is recently retired from competition, but still heavily involved in the scene. The third is currently active on a professional team and wants to mentor during her off-season. Having pros volunteer brings serious credibility to the program and will attract even more experienced players. The program expands rapidly over the next few months to 70 mentor-mentee pairs across 8 different competitive games. We're not just focused on my game anymore, but supporting female players across the entire gaming scene. Moira helps establish regional chapters so people can meet in person instead of only connecting online. The chapters organize local practice sessions and group attendance at smaller tournaments. This gives mentees the chance to compete with built-in support systems instead of showing up alone and scared. The organizational structure is becoming real and legitimate, instead of just me answering messages and setting up video calls. We have coordinators for different regions and game categories. We create better tracking systems for mentor-mentee matches and progress reports. The whole thing is turning into an actual organization with reach and impact beyond what I imagined when I first started responding to those hundreds of messages. Heather gets signed to a professional team, which is massive news because they're one of the biggest organizations in competitive gaming. She becomes one of their first female players in the team's entire history. Her signing announcement specifically credits the mentorship program for helping her develop the skills and confidence to compete at the professional level. The announcement gets picked up by major gaming news sites and brings another wave of attention to what we're doing. Applications surge again, and we have to expand our waitlist. The professional team's social media posts about Heather joining get huge engagement with mostly positive responses. Sure, there are still some idiots in the comments making stupid jokes, but they get drowned out by genuine excitement. Other professional teams start paying attention and reaching out asking about our mentorship model. Some want to partner with us to develop their own female player pipelines. The whole ecosystem is shifting in ways that felt impossible 3 years ago. 2 other major tournament organizations invite me to consult on their harassment policies. They want to implement the same standards we established after my incident with Calvin. I bring the same uncompromising approach to their policy development. No more looking the other way when competitors harass each other. No more treating abuse as normal trash talk that's just part of gaming culture. Mandatory reporting systems for harassment complaints. Immediate investigation procedures with clear timelines. Graduated consequences starting with warnings and escalating to permanent bans for serious violations. Both organizations adopt policies that are even stricter than what I initially proposed. They recognize that half measures don't work, and competitors need to know that harassment has real consequences. The policies go into effect at their next major events, and competitors are required to acknowledge them during registration. Some players complain about political correctness ruining gaming, but they're the exact people these policies are designed to weed out. 10 months after her first major tournament, Bridget competes in another one. I'm in the audience again watching her walk through registration with complete confidence. She's not the nervous kid who needed me to fill out her forms anymore. She moves through early brackets smoothly and efficiently. Her gameplay has evolved significantly since that first tournament. She's incorporated advanced techniques we practiced and developed her own style. The competition gets tougher in later rounds, but she handles the pressure like someone who's been doing this for years instead of months. I watch her adapt to different opponent strategies and make smart adjustments between rounds. She makes it all the way to the finals. The finals opponent is tough and experienced, but Bridget plays with the confidence of someone who knows she belongs on that stage. I'm sitting in the audience watching her compete at the highest level with zero fear or hesitation. This is exactly what I wanted to create through the mentorship program. Not just helping girls win tournaments, but helping them compete with the absolute certainty that they deserve to be there. The finals match goes to 5 games. Bridget plays with everything I taught her and everything she figured out on her own. Her opponent is 23 and has been competing professionally for 4 years. The crowd is split between them, chanting and cheering after every big play. Bridget takes the first game, loses the second and third, wins the fourth to force the deciding match. I'm gripping the armrests of my seat so hard my fingers hurt. The final game comes down to one crucial moment. Bridget has the advantage but makes a risky play that doesn't work out. Her opponent capitalizes immediately and closes out the match. Second place. The crowd gives both players a standing ovation. Bridget stands up from her station and shakes her opponent's hand, then turns to look at me in the audience. She's smiling even though she lost. The post-match interview happens right there on stage. The host congratulates Bridget on an incredible run and asks how it feels to place second at 15 years old. She talks about the competition being tough and her opponent playing better today. The coverage afterward focuses entirely on her skill and potential. Gaming news sites run headlines about the youngest finalist in tournament history. Nobody mentions her gender as a qualifier or excuse. The articles analyze her gameplay, her strategies, her future in competitive gaming. It feels like actual progress when skill gets recognized as skill instead of being filtered through whether someone is a girl or guy. After the awards ceremony, people are filing out of the venue. Bridget is talking to some other competitors near the stage. I'm heading toward her when some guy in the crowd yells out that she probably cheated. His voice carries across the whole space. Everyone nearby stops and turns to look. Bridget doesn't hesitate for even a second. She walks straight to where the microphone is still set up on stage, picks it up, and her voice comes through the speakers. She asks if he wants to say that again, then adds that her mentor is Void Killer. The room goes completely silent. You could hear someone breathing from across the venue. The guy who yelled is standing there frozen. Then someone in the crowd starts laughing. Another person joins in. Within seconds, the entire room is laughing at him, not with him. He tries to say something, but nobody can hear it over the noise. He pushes through the crowd and leaves through the side exit. I watch him go and feel this deep satisfaction that has nothing to do with my own vindication. The community just defended Bridget without me having to do anything. Other competitors are patting her on the back and congratulating her. Tournament staff are smiling. The whole atmosphere shifted in her favor because she stood up for herself and people backed her up instead of attacking her. That moment changes something for me. I've been thinking about this work as holding space open for other girls to compete safely, making sure they don't face what I faced. But watching Bridget grab that microphone and challenge someone who tried to diminish her achievement, I realize she's not just occupying space I'm holding open. She's claiming it as her own. She's making it hers. The next generation isn't just benefiting from the battles I fought. They're fighting their own battles with confidence because they know they have support. They're not scared and alone the way I was. That's what actually matters. Not that I cleared the path, but that they're walking it without fear. 3 weeks later, the mentorship program hits its 1-year anniversary. Moira sends me the statistics. 85 active mentor-mentee pairs across 9 different competitive games. 15 success stories of mentees winning tournaments or joining professional teams. 3 mentees have gotten sponsorship deals. 7 are streaming regularly with growing audiences. The Discord server has over 200 members now, including mentors, mentees, and alumni who stay involved to help newcomers. We're making measurable impact that shows up in actual results. Girls are competing, winning, building careers in gaming. The numbers prove the program works beyond just good intentions. Moira calls me the next day and says the tournament organization wants to talk about expansion. They've been contacted by gaming organizations in 6 other countries, asking about our model. Everyone wants to know how we structured the program, how we match mentors with mentees, how we handle issues that come up. The organization is proposing partnerships to replicate what we built internationally. Moira asks if I'm interested in being involved with the expansion. The idea of going global is overwhelming. I built this program for the girls who messaged me after my story went viral. I never imagined it would spread beyond North America. But if it can help more people, if it can create the same kind of support network in other countries, then obviously I want to be part of that. I tell Moira yes before I can overthink it. 2 months later, I compete in another major championship. I win my 11th title. During the post-match interview, the host asks about my future plans. I announce that I'm stepping back from competing full-time to focus on leading the mentorship program. I'll still compete occasionally, but my priority is the work that creates lasting change instead of just adding more trophies to my collection. The decision feels right. I've proven everything I needed to prove as a competitor. Now it's time to put that energy into building something bigger than my own career. The crowd applauds when I explain what the program does and how it's expanding. Several people come up to me afterward asking how they can get involved as mentors. 3 months after that, Bridget competes in another major championship. I'm not competing this time, so I sit in the audience and watch her dominate every match. She's incorporated new techniques we practiced and developed her own style that's different from mine. Her gameplay is aggressive but calculated. She takes risks but always has backup plans. She makes it through bracket after bracket until she's in the finals again. This time she wins. Youngest champion in that tournament's entire history. When they announce her victory, she points at me in the audience before accepting the trophy. Her gamer tag is still Ashley's mouse, the tribute to our mentoring relationship and the equipment Calvin destroyed years ago. The commentators mention the story during the broadcast, how she's part of the mentorship program, how having support from experienced players changed everything for her. Bridget's victory speech happens right there on stage with thousands of people watching in person and hundreds of thousands streaming online. She talks about how having a mentor who understood the specific challenges made all the difference. She encourages other experienced players to join the mentorship program because that support matters more than anyone realizes. The message spreads across gaming social media within hours. Clips of her speech get shared everywhere. Applications to become mentors triple overnight. People who never considered mentoring are reaching out asking how they can help. The impact goes way beyond just Bridget's individual achievement. I watch her lift that trophy and see the same fierce joy I felt at my first championship. But there's something different about her victory compared to mine. I had to fight alone. I had to prove myself to a community that didn't want me there. I had to face harassment and intimidation with nobody backing me up until after I'd already won. Bridget didn't have to do any of that. She competed knowing she had support. She faced that heckler knowing the community would defend her. She built her career knowing there were people who wanted her to succeed. That's the whole point of everything I've been working toward. Not that I survived the harassment and won anyway, but that the next generation doesn't have to survive it at all because we changed the environment they're competing in. That's what victory actually looks like. 2 months after Bridget's championship, the mentorship program hits 100 mentor-mentee pairs. Moira calls me on a Tuesday afternoon with the numbers and asks if I'm ready to make this official. We spend 3 weeks filing paperwork to establish a formal nonprofit organization. Moira becomes executive director because she has the organizational skills, and I have the public profile. We divide responsibilities based on what each of us does best. The nonprofit status means we can accept donations and grants to cover travel costs for mentees attending their first tournaments. We can pay for equipment for girls who can't afford decent setups. We can offer scholarships for tournament entry fees. This thing I started by answering messages in my inbox has turned into something sustainable and bigger than any one person. The structure means it'll keep going even if I step back someday. I still compete occasionally because walking away completely would feel like letting the Calvins win in a different way. 14 months after the original incident, I win my 12th championship at a major tournament in Seattle. The victory feels less important than the message it sends every single time I step on stage. Speaking up about harassment didn't end my career. I'm still here. I'm still winning. Every trophy proves that telling the truth doesn't make you weak or ruin your future. The gaming media covers my 12th win, but spends more time talking about the nonprofit and how many girls are competing now who wouldn't have before. That shift in focus is exactly what I wanted. Calvin's stream is down to 40 viewers now when I check it late one night. Most of the chat is bots spamming crypto scams and fake giveaway links. He's playing a different game because he can't compete in his original specialty anymore with the lifetime bans. His viewer count used to be in the thousands back when he had sponsorships and a team. Now it's just him in a dark room talking to almost nobody. Some people tell me it's petty to check his numbers. Maybe it is. But I earned the right to feel satisfied watching consequences play out. Justice doesn't always happen in situations like mine. When it does, I'm allowed to notice. The thing about spaces people say you don't belong in is that you don't just take them for yourself. You hold them open for everyone who comes after you. I watch the next generation compete without the fear I had at their age. They walk into tournament halls knowing there are policies protecting them, and mentors supporting them, and a community that will defend them if someone tries what Calvin tried. Bridget lifts trophies without anyone questioning if she cheated. Heather joins professional teams without anyone asking if she's just there for diversity. New girls register for their first tournaments without shaking hands or tasting blood. That's the best victory I could have asked for. Not revenge, not personal glory, just watching the doors stay open and seeing who walks through them. All right, that's all I've got today. Thanks for letting me share this little moment with you. I hope it sits with you in a good way.